Simon, this has absolutely exploded
Yep.
as a story. Novak Djokovic has been refused entry, for those who don't know, to Australia, the Australian Open just round the corner, with border officials there citing that he hadn't met visa entry rules. It all comes after a public backlash to the world number one being granted a COVID vaccination exemption. So what are we talking about here? What this guy loves doing is winning, and it appears that he loves winning the Australian Open. The thing is he going to be playing in the Australian Open? At the moment, Novak Djokovic, the same Novak Djokovic, the most famous Serb to ever play tennis, is holed up in quarantine in an hotel and isn't getting out until Monday. Is that right, Luke? Yeah. It's because it's adjourned until Monday. We're going to speak to the Times tennis correspondent Stuart Fraser in a second. But certainly when you hear the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, you certainly think, oof, he means business.
There are no special cases. Rules are rules. It's what I said to you yesterday. That's the policy of the government, and has been our government's strong border protection policies, and particularly in relation to the pandemic, that has ensured that Australia has one of the lowest death rates from COVID anywhere in the world. It is not appropriate for me to go into Mr Djokovic's own medical history. That would not be a fair thing for us to do. They are matters for him to discuss in terms of his own medical history. Entry with a visa requires double vaccination or a medical exemption. I'm advised that such an exemption was not in place, and as a result, he is subject to the same rule as anyone else.
Well, Scott Morrison was speaking there following this backlash over a vaccine exemption Djokovic announced that he'd received on Tuesday.
Yep.
And that, Simon, would have allowed him in to play in the Australian Open after months of uncertainty. We still live in a time of uncertainty regards whether or not Djokovic is going to get on court. As I mentioned, the Times tennis correspondent Stuart Fraser, Simon, is joining us right now. Stuart, good morning. Is this thing going to go ahead without Djokovic?
It's very hard to say, Jim, at the moment, because that's up to the courts, and I don't have full knowledge of Australian law. It's actually funny listening to that sort of clip there from Scott Morrison, the Aussie PM, because I think that sums it up in a way. That people have this idea of Australia as this sort of laid-back country where everyone drinks beer and lies back on the beach and stuff. And there is an element of that, no doubt, but I've been there 10 times, and it is a rules-obsessed country. They love a rule. They will stick by the rules. And clearly, the Aussie PM feels that Novak Djokovic is not going by the rules here.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Simon, Tennis Australia said his medical exemption had been granted by 2 independent medical panels, but border officials say he's failed to provide appropriate evidence for entry after arriving on Wednesday from Dubai.
Yeah.
I mean, was Djokovic here getting too cocky about the whole thing, thinking he was just going to breeze in?
A little bit. I mean, I've owned a business in Australia, and I don't concur with Stuart's view about rules. I think their rules, their approach to this particular conundrum, their approach to COVID, is very, very strident. They have very strident views and rules in that perspective. And whether we think they're backward or not is irrelevant. It's their rules. And Djokovic, and I know his brother because I've played tennis with him in Spain at the tennis club where his brother coaches. So I know his attitude and his disposition towards this particular situation has been very publicly documented. You know, they call him an anti-vaxxer. That's not the case. He has a particular objection to this particular scenario, but he has also been mooting things like 5G conspiracy theories and talking about the manner in which the world is operating. And of course, there was this backdrop when he did his own tournament, the Adria tournament, where there was a behavioural situation where players weren't approaching the tournament with any kind of understanding of the backdrop, and there was a COVID outbreak as a result of all the players that participated in it. So he set himself up for this situation. And then he's rocked into Australia. You know, I'm going to be facetious with a note signed by Mr. G. Ivanovicevic saying I'm exempt, right? And I'm not sure that he's passed the sniff test. And I was gobsmacked that the Australians actually were going to let him in on the backdrop of an exemption, given their situation. And primarily they've done it from the tournament point of view is because he's a defending champion. And they want him there commercially. But it was always going to be an interceding from the government. I'm gobsmacked that he didn't intercede before he got on the plane.
Yeah. I mean, Stuart, can the organisers of the Australian Open, as Simon says there, can they afford to let this tournament start, go ahead, and get in deep into the later stages without Djokovic, the champion?
Well, they can, because I know Djokovic is such a huge draw, and already the tournament is missing Roger Federer and Serena Williams, two, massive star names, and they'll be a big miss to the tournament. But I remember going to the US Open a few months ago, and quite a few big names absent there, and people were worried about the tournament. Actually, look at the stories it produced. Some of the matches were brilliant. Tennis always moves on, even when the greats retire or withdraw or whatever. So clearly, I agree with Simon there. Clearly, the tournament would like Djokovic to compete. Going for 10th title, going for the record 21st Grand Slam men's singles title. But then you have this conflict between what the independent panels appointed by Tennis Australia and the Victorian government believe, and what the border force believe to be the rules.
It's an incredible set of circumstances, isn't it?
It is.
It really, when you look at it, what was Djokovic thinking? I mean, he knows where he's heading to. Melbourne is a city that suffered 6 lockdowns, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, there is an element. I mean, I don't like to say it because I like him and I've spent time with him and I like him as a person. But there was an element of arrogance and conceit, that there was an element of, I can effectively not have to be obliged to do certain things. He would have known and should have known, and if he didn't know, then his team around him should have been a bit more professional. Okay, what do we really need here? Let's make sure there's no ambiguity. Let's make sure we're belt and braces. I've put myself front and centre with my views, and he's entitled to his views. And some of his views I agree with as well. But he would have known walking into that there was a possibility, or he should have known. But there's an element of, when you get to celebrity status, when you're the number one tennis player in the world and everybody wants you everywhere, that you believe that sport can overcome. And it doesn't. Sport is just another factor of society. It's a hugely influential one.
Yeah.
But politics and geopolitics and politics around these particular circumstances are going to trump sport every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah.
So he's played himself into a situation. And of course, I'm watching the television. I'm watching Sky turn around and say which plane he flew in. I was expecting them to take a picture of which toilet he's been to, because we're getting to that level of detail. But the bottom line is it's incumbent upon Djokovic now to try and find a mechanism to find out exactly what he needs to give them from an exemption point of view to overcome it, and he will get as much help as he can from the Australian Tennis Federation, or specifically this tournament, because they want him there, because it obviously, as Stuart alludes to, he's a draw. But let's also be clear, this is a Grand Slam, and it will still get massive coverage with or without Djokovic. Of course.
And right now, Stuart, the eyes of the world are on this tournament because of what's going on with Djokovic. Can you second guess it for me, Stuart? I know I've pushed you before, but I'll push you again. How will this end? There must be an awful lot of nervousness around at the moment amongst the Australian officials, and not least amongst Djokovic's people. I mean, will they have the right to appeal? What will happen?
Yeah, so we're going through that process at the moment, and listen, it is a sort of win for him being able to stay even till Monday. A lot of people thought he might be sent effectively in the first flight home, but he's in a hotel in Melbourne at the moment, not a very pleasant hotel by all accounts, but he's there and he'll have his appeal heard on Monday morning. I suspect he'll still be sent home. I think they'll stick by the rules, and perhaps his paperwork won't live up to the task, but he's certainly been given a bit of time to sort that out, which could help his case.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning 10 till 1 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.